General Hospital spoilers tease that Brennan, with his cautious demeanor and seemingly sincere words, is quietly executing a deeper plot than anyone could imagine. When Carly turns to him, seeking an ally amidst the chaos caused by the attacks on Sunny, little does she know that Brennan is the one who is planting a new earthquake into the very thing she is trying to protect. He doesn't refuse to help. On the contrary, Brennan appears eager, attentive, empathetic, and subtly gains Carly's trust in the most sophisticated way. But behind his calm face and grand promises, Brennan is gradually deceiving Carly, reshaping the entire investigation process into a new direction, a direction only he knows the end goal of. One of the big ideas Brennan is silently implementing is changing the structure of the story, stirring up events, bending the truth, and leading Carly into dangerous dead ends. He's not merely providing information, he is rebuilding the entire reality that Carly is trying to understand, piece by piece, with deliberately fabricated pieces. As Carly begins to listen to Brennan, she doesn't realize that each detail he reveals, each suggestion he makes, has been carefully calculated to mislead her. Brennan paints a picture of a false enemy, a seemingly rational target, but in reality, it's just a ghost that he created, making Carly relentlessly chase after it in vain. He sows doubt and new fears in her mind, making her believe that she is getting closer to the truth, while in fact, she is walking straight into a trap. And while Carly is focusing all her investigative efforts on those fake traces, Brennan is quietly rearranging the stage behind the scenes. He's not just deceiving Carly, but he's pushing her into a new danger zone, a maze where every step forward is actually bringing her closer to her doom. Carly, with all her love and courage, cannot see that her strongest beliefs are being exploited, turned into the most dangerous weapon against her. Every meeting, every exchange of information between Carly and Brennan is no longer a simple conversation, but an underground trial, where Brennan is the judge, the prosecutor, the one holding the power of life and death. He manipulates Carly's words, leads her reactions, and gradually forces her into a position he has mapped out beforehand. A position that is extremely fragile and vulnerable. The new madness that Brennan is creating is not just a web of lies, but an entire simulated world built around Carly. She can no longer distinguish between what is real and what is fake, between allies and enemies. And in that chaos, Brennan continues to drop misleading information, intricately woven details, and twisted pieces that cause Carly to sink deeper into the mire with no way to escape. The real danger isn't just that Carly is being misled. The real danger is that Brennan is slowly pushing her away from the protective circle of people who could actually save her. Jason, Sunny, even Dante, those who used to be her safety net, are now being distanced from her because of the doubts Brennan has cleverly planted in her mind. Carly, believing that she is acting for Sunny, is actually being manipulated to become a pawn in a much larger scheme, a scheme whose ultimate target might not only be Sunny, but Carly herself. And when Brennan sees that Carly has fallen far enough into the invisible trap, he won't hesitate to activate the rest of the plan, forcing Carly to face danger directly, making her make irreversible mistakes that will push both herself and those she loves into a life-threatening situation. Every passing moment, Carly is getting tighter in the web of lies, getting closer to the moment when all her efforts will be brutally betrayed. This story is not just an investigation into an assassination plot against Sunny. It's the story of how a strong, brave woman is broken by her own misplaced devotion and trust. And if Carly doesn't soon realize that Brennan is the one pushing her into the abyss, the price she pays could be not only her life but the collapse of everything she's ever fought to protect. Brennan is entering a more dangerous phase than ever before. After the growing suspicions in Carly and Jason's minds, he knows he can no longer maintain the perfect facade as he once did. Every cold glance from Jason, every wary look from Carly, feels like sharp daggers piercing the empty space Brennan once easily manipulated. Forced into a corner, Brennan realizes he needs to regain control, immediately, before everything slips completely out of his grasp. But just as Brennan is scrambling in the dark, a new madness quietly takes shape, pushing everything into a new layer of chaos. Colette, the secret ally Brennan once thought was a loyal backup card, is now starting to reveal herself with her own ambitions. Colette is no longer just a part of the plan, she's ready to take control, preparing a shift that even Brennan couldn't have foreseen. Her presence is like an underground storm, a new, ominous force that Brennan both desperately wants to harness and fears losing control of. As Brennan hurries to restage the story, alter evidence, and spread more lies to soothe Carly and mislead Jason, Colette is quietly drawing up a different picture, a new plan, where the real power lies in her hands, not Brennan's. Both Brennan and Colette, through relentless covert moves, are heading into a new chess game, a battle where every nod, every promise hides a dagger behind it. They are no longer true allies. They are two predators pretending to cooperate, both waiting to deliver a lethal blow to the other when the time comes. Brennan knows that if he wants to survive, he must urgently adjust the entire game. He must convince Carly that her doubts are unfounded, fool Jason into believing that the investigation is on the right track, while simultaneously keeping a close watch on Colette, who could stab him in the back at any moment. Brennan is forced to play a double dangerous game. Defending against outside pressure while trying to control the internal rift that grows hour by hour. But Colette, with her sharp instincts and unabashed ambition, is steadily gaining the upper hand. She knows Brennan is cornered. She knows how sharp Jason is, how strong Carly's intuition is. And because of that, Colette understands that this is the golden opportunity to dive deeper, to reshape the game in the way she wants. Once Brennan slips, even just once, Colette won't hesitate to push him into the bottomless pit. The scariest thing is that Brennan is already realizing this truth. Every exchange between him and Colette now carries a heavy atmosphere of suspicion, with polite words spoken through lips but hiding cold, sharp schemes behind them. Both are wearing masks, both are smiling, but in each of their hearts, an underground war is smoldering, ready to explode at any moment. And in the midst of this chaos, Carly and Jason, who seemed like mere prey, are gradually becoming the greatest threat to the entire plot. The signs they pick up, the odd details they connect, are slowly unveiling what Brennan and Colette are trying to hide. Brennan feels the heavy pressure every minute, every second, sensing the noose tightening around his neck. He must act faster, more cleverly, or accept being swept away by the very waves of madness he and Colette have created. One of the new obsessions forming in Brennan's mind, clearer by the moment, is, there's no one left he can trust completely, no one standing fully by his side. Colette is not an ally. Carly and Jason are not naive puppets. And the world that Brennan once thought he controlled is cracking into pieces, with each crack revealing a dark secret, a deadly danger with no easy way out. If Brennan doesn't quickly turn things around, he will not only lose control over Sonny and Carly, but he could lose everything, his power, his freedom, even his life. And somewhere in the dark, Colette is smiling coldly, waiting for the moment Brennan completely collapses to take his place and rewrite the rules in the way she wants. In a city as unfamiliar as Los Angeles, amid countless invisible dangers lurking, Carly found herself almost pushed into a desperate situation. All the people she trusted, those who had once stood by her side in Port Charles, were now too far away, and Sonny was critically ill in a hospital bed. In this context, Carly had only one choice left, to rely on Brennan, the only man beside her at this moment, the one she had no choice but to trust, even though a sense of unease smoldered in her heart. Brennan, with his calm demeanor and weighty promises, quickly became Carly's only lifeline amid the storm. He listened to her, comforted her, and offered action plans that seemed logical and dedicated. But behind that kind face, Brennan was secretly manipulating the entire game in a dark direction that Carly had no idea about. One of Carly's growing obsessions was the feeling that she was being led into a game for which she didn't know the rules. Subtle madness began to emerge, making every movement around her seem like it was being shaped by a force she couldn't see. And the only one controlling that chaos, no one else but Brennan. But fate began to change when Carly unexpectedly came into possession of new evidence. A strange piece, an unusual detail that Brennan never expected Carly would uncover. A file, a surveillance video, a fragmentary testimony that seemed insignificant, but it held the power to unravel the entire web of lies that Brennan had constructed. Carly understood that if she used this evidence correctly, she could expose the truth and save Sonny before it was too late. However, that very moment pushed everything into a more dangerous direction than ever before. Brennan, with the instincts of a seasoned predator, immediately sensed the change in Carly's behavior. He noticed the wary glances, the sharp questions, the suspicious silences in their conversations. And he knew. If he didn't act now, everything he had carefully built would collapse into dust. Brennan no longer had time for subtle hints and seduction. He needed a decisive blow, a shock so intense it would keep Carly from focusing on the investigation, a new tragedy that would make everyone busy dealing with it and forget about the lingering suspicions. So, Brennan quietly planned his next attack on Sunny, a more brutal and dangerous strike that could be the final blow to end everything. Brennan wasn't acting alone. Colette, his shadowy associate whom he once thought he could control, now had her own plans. Between Brennan and Colette, a fragile link remained, no longer for loyalty, but for the shared benefit in this deadly game. They prepared another accident for Sunny, a scheme so intricately staged that all evidence would point to the hospital's negligence, to a system failure, leaving no trace back to them. This new madness wasn't just a murder plot. It was the complete restructuring of their battle, using a life as a tool to hide the truth, to keep the dark secrets safe just a little longer. And Brennan believed that by doing this, he could eliminate the threat named Carly without lifting a finger. But Carly was no longer the naive woman who once believed in pretty lies. Her instincts, sharpened by loss and betrayal, were screaming in alarm. She knew something wasn't right. She felt the chilling cold of betrayal behind every smile, every promise. And she began to act, quietly, discreetly, but with determination. Carly began secretly gathering more information, cross-referencing small details, quietly checking every word Brennan said. She knew she couldn't reveal herself too soon. A single mistake could cost both her and Sunny their lives. Carly was walking a fine line between life and death, and only through sharpness, persistence, and courage could she turn the tide. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Brennan and Colette, confident they still controlled everything, continued to execute their deadly plan, unaware that Carly was preparing a counterattack that could topple the entire empire of lies they had so carefully built. The real war had only just begun. And this time, there was no room for compromise, no room for deals. This would be a battle of life and death, where truth and lies clashed violently, and only the strongest, the most alert, and the most daring could survive. Brennan, who had always prided himself on his ability to control and manipulate every situation, now found himself truly pushed into a new state of obsession. Since Carly quietly held sensitive information, every solid foundation Brennan had built began to shake violently. He felt like there was an invisible blade always at his throat, ready to cut everything off with a single wrong move. Brennan's obsession was not only the fear of being exposed, but also the fear of losing power, losing the absolute advantage he had spent so long building. In Brennan's mind, every move Carly made, every conversation she joined, every small expression she showed became a potential threat he couldn't control. The more he tried to cover up, the more he realized he was being drawn into a mad vortex with no escape. In this chaos, Brennan was forced to make a daring decision, to establish a new interaction with Sidwell. An emergency adjustment, a reluctant move to save a situation that was slipping further out of his control. Sidwell, with all his danger and insatiable greed, was a risky pawn, but in this situation, Brennan had no other choice. The meeting between Brennan and Sidwell was not one of collaboration but a covert power struggle, where every word carried a threat, every handshake hid a dagger. Brennan knew Sidwell trusted no one but himself. And Sidwell knew Brennan only came to him when he was truly desperate. That fragile balance made their new relationship dangerously suffocating. Under the crushing pressure of imminent collapse, Brennan began sharing fragments of information with Sidwell. Plans for the next attack on Sunny, fake details Brennan wanted Sidwell to help spread, fabricated stories to mislead Carly and Jason. Brennan needed Sidwell to do the dirty work, while he stayed behind, manipulating the results. But with every agreement Brennan made, every adjustment he tried to salvage the situation, things grew even more insane. Sidwell was no obedient pawn. He began demanding more, challenging Brennan, forcing him to concede more than Brennan had ever imagined. Sidwell didn't just want money. He wanted power. He wanted control over the game Brennan was trying to hold on to. With every concession Brennan made, every bit of power he gave away, a small part of his grand plan cracked. And Brennan knew he was getting more and more trapped in the deadly trap Sidwell had set. He felt like a wounded animal, struggling in a trap that tightened the more it fought. From being the one in control, Brennan was now spiraling into a new vicious circle. One of his own making, but one that was beyond his control. Carly was still there, quietly preparing her counterattack with new evidence. Jason was still there, sharp as a patient predator. And now, Sidwell, both a temporary ally and a potential enemy, was standing right beside Brennan, wearing a cold smile, waiting for the moment Brennan would fall to seize everything. In that heavy atmosphere, Brennan understood that he wasn't just fighting to save Sonny or hide his crimes from Carly anymore. He was fighting to save himself from an inevitable end, betrayal, collapse, and death creeping closer with each hour. But would Brennan be sharp enough to turn the tide, or had he slipped too far into the madness he had created? A new adjustment, a bolder move, could be his last chance, or perhaps the final blow to everything. If Carly had once accepted passivity, had once relied on Brennan to find an escape amidst the chaos, everything had changed now. Carly had quietly made new calculations, plans drawn in silence, as sharp as daggers hidden in her sleeves. She was no longer the woman easily manipulated, easily led by flowery promises. Brennan never anticipated that Carly would quickly reverse the game, turning herself into the true predator in this chess match. The story was rapidly pushing Carly and Brennan toward a direct confrontation, an inevitable clash as suspicions, evidence, and schemes piled up, pushing them both into an open opposition with no cover. One of the new pressures was mounting, tightening around them like a bomb ready to explode at any moment. Brennan, once accustomed to controlling everything, now clearly felt the uncontrollable slide. Carly, with her cold gaze and determined smile, was slowly becoming the greatest threat to everything he had worked so hard to cover up. One of the new crazinesses was beginning to form between them, a madness fueled by hatred, by covert schemes turning into real actions. Brennan felt his control slipping away piece by piece, while Carly, step by step, slowly but surely, was pushing him toward the edge. And then, when everything reached its breaking point, a huge shock exploded. An event that not only shook the relationship between Carly and Brennan but also rocked the entire underground game in the shadows. With the evidence she had carefully collected, with the cards she had hidden, Carly was ready to strike directly at Brennan, an unforgiving blow, not allowing any chance for retreat. Carly understood that this game had gone too far to return to balance. The secrets Brennan held were no longer just threatening Sonny, no longer just threatening her, but threatening everyone she loved, the entire world she had fought to build and protect. And so, Carly chose to strike before she was taken down. Her new plan was meticulously laid out, like a complete military operation. She no longer just sought evidence. She wanted to drag Brennan into the light, force him to face his crimes before everyone. She planned to expose the tapes, the secret documents, the evidence Brennan thought was buried beneath the dust of lies. Brennan, despite his sharpness and experience, was beginning to feel the suffocating pressure. He realized Carly was no longer playing by the old rules. She was running her own game, and each step she took was a silent declaration of war that couldn't be mistaken. This explosion wasn't just a verbal confrontation. This was the real battle, where reputation, power, and even lives were at stake. And when Carly prepared to make her decisive move, Brennan knew he had no choice but to retaliate. He had no way out. Once Carly struck, everything would end. Brennan would lose everything, power, freedom, and above all, the network of conspiracies he had so carefully hidden. At that moment, Brennan began to plan a more brutal and darker counterattack, a final move to save himself. But Carly, with the courage forged through countless losses, was no longer an easy prey. She had seen through Brennan. She was prepared for every worst-case scenario. And she knew that if she didn't finish Brennan off right now, there would be no second chance. All the hatred, all the schemes, all the lies that had accumulated over time were now colliding violently, driving Carly and Brennan into a life-and-death battle, where only one person would emerge victorious, and the other would be left with nothing but the ashes of shattered ambition.